What's going on, everybody? Hope everyone is having a great week. Welcome back into Breaking Boards and welcome in for another episode of Showdown Live. Given that we are still a couple of weeks out from the NFL season kicking off, I wanted to hop on and talk a little bit more about our first game, which pits the New England Patriots traveling to Lumen Field in Seattle to take on the Seattle Seahawks. This one's a rematch of the Super Bowl. Total currently sitting at 44.5, with Seattle being 3.5 point favorites. Some news in this one early today. Ran all my numbers, had everything ready to go for today's live stream. And then we got the Trevion Henderson news, which we'll talk about here in just a bit. Here a couple hours ago, we had the news break for Kayshon Boutte being traded over to my Houston Texans. Glad that we were able to snag another receiver there, given that we lost Higgins to that ACL tear. So I'm glad that we could, replenish our wide receiver core. And we'll talk about how that affects New England here more than how it affects Houston currently, given that New England is on this first slate. We'll hop over to DK. We'll talk about this essentially in three different tiers. We're going to talk about the board first and how I would attack things on DK. Then we're going to take a look at my Breaking Boards sim guide. If you do sign up for the premium product, this is something that you'll have access to as we move throughout the season. But for the first slate, going to make this a little bit more forward-facing so everybody knows what they're getting out of the product if they do sign up for Breaking Boards Premium. And if you do notice, we are lowering the price from $39.99 to $19.99. Absolute just craziness for 20 bucks a month. I mean, I don't know how you wouldn't get your value out of this at 20 bucks. It's quite literally essentially me working for free at this point, but sometimes it is what it is. And yeah, $19.99, breakingboardsdfs.com. Go sign up, go check us out. All the stuff for the main slate's already up on the site. And then we have the showdown stuff up for the first slate for New England at Seattle. Me and the guys, Adam, Michael, and Ben are going to be going live this Sunday at 9:30. 9:30 till about 10:30, 11, doing a full breakdown of the main slate live, which we'll do starting every Sunday now. So you'll have access to that as well. But without further ado, and without selling you guys any more stuff, let's talk about the first team up on the slate over here on DK, and we'll talk about Drake May. Very much in the captain conversation here. If you're going to pair Drake May, you can pair him alongside 1, 2, or 3 pass catchers or I should say teammates at this point, given that we're going to look at the kicker as well. But you can pair him alongside 1, 2, or 3 guys for New England. If I was going to pair Drake May with somebody, it would be AJ Brown, Ramondre Stevenson. You can get Trevion in there depending on his health. I saw some news where it looks like he may be good to go, so we're not going to dock him just yet. You could get Romeo Doubs. Again, Boutte is on his way to Houston. You could get Borregales. You could get Hunter Henry. You could get Matt Collins. You could get Pop Douglas. You could get Kyle Williams now. You could get Eli Raridan. And that's about where I would stop here for New England. Reggie Gilliam's likely to see some snaps, but again, I think you're probably just wasting your time going that low on the board. So if I were going to have Drake May in my captain spot, I'm probably going to look at something, along these lines here and run it back with 2 guys from Seattle. Most of my builds for week number 1 are going to be, or for this showdown slate in week number 1, are going to be 3-3 and 4-2 builds. We'll get to the sim product here in just a moment, let you guys take a look at the Sims guide. But essentially, that's what my lineup would look like if I were going to start with Drake May up top. Also, don't mind getting to something like that. Again, 4-2, 3-3, essentially however you want to dice it up with Drake May in the captain spot with the guys that we talked about just momentarily, or just a moment ago. Next up here, we'll take a look at the running back spot for New England, and I think you can consider both these guys captain viable if they are healthy. I would imagine that once we look at our Sims, again, I just ran the Sims just a moment ago, so we're going to actually look at these live together in here in a moment. But I would imagine that if Trevion is healthy, he's going to be someone who you're going to want to get to in larger field tournaments. Maybe a 20 max type scenario, but definitely in 150. Um, but if I'm playing smaller field stuff, he's probably not a guy I'm getting a ton of in the captain spot. He's more of a flex option for me. If you are playing him in large field stuff, again, you can go uh, 2 New England guys, you can go 4 Seattle, or you can go 3 New England guys and 3 Seattle. If I'm building, I'll line up with the Trevion up top, for example. I'm probably looking at Trevion, you know, maybe New England's defense, and let's get off the board a little more here with, let's say, Hunter Henry. Something like that, and run it back with 3, or you could run it back there. Likely wouldn't go to the defense. I likely would go there and then run it back on the other side with 4 guys from Seattle. Ramondre Stevenson is actually my favorite player here for this backfield. I think you're likely to see a lot of the same role that he saw in 2025, at least to start in 2026. So again, Ramondre and Borregales with 4 Seattle, or if you wanted to go, Henry and the Pats defense and 3 Seattle. There's different ways to chop this up with these guys. I will say that, given the injuries that we'll talk about when we get to the Seattle side, that offense is becoming a lot more condensed in Seattle. And given that Booty just moved out of New England and again is headed to Houston, we're likely to see that offense condensed just a bit as well, even though this New England squad has quite a few pass catchers. What's up, Mike? Glad you're hanging out with me. Yeah, finally back. We took a week off to get everything nailed down and get ready to go for week number 1. Got everything hammered down, sites up, sites ready to go. Got the stuff scheduled as far as like content release and week 1 stuff and all the behind the scenes stuff. So we took a little bit of time to get that squared away. The guys will not be joining me for this one today, but they are going to join me for Sunday at 9:30. We're going to go live for about an hour and a half and talk about the week 1 slate. But hopping back over here to this showdown slate, AJ Brown up top, Romeo Dobbs. Got 5 guys I think we can consider here. Again, Kayshon Boutte on his way to Houston. Got Mac Hollins, you got Pop Douglas, and you got Kyle Williams. Kyle Williams is someone that would be intriguing in your 150 sets as a potential captain, depending on how the salary looks. And let's actually play with that here for a second. Let's say we throw Kyle Williams in the captain. What does it get us, otherwise? And let's take the lock off New England up here. And let's go here. So you could go Kyle Williams. Let's say Drake May throws him a bomb. Let's say then Seattle is throwing to catch up. Obviously, I think Ramondre is a good look here. You could go double QB perhaps. And I mean, look at that. Sets up pretty nicely if you don't mind double tapping New England running back there. You could get there as well. Again, we're not really too concerned about salary on a showdown slate. We're more concerned about ownership and duplication, that kind of stuff. So you can get Kyle Williams up top if you're playing your 150 maxes. If you're doing it, I think you probably lean again 3-3 or 4-4. So if you're playing Kyle Williams up top again, you probably want to get to as much of this offense as you can without going too crazy. So something like that, and run it back on the other side with 3 Seattle guys. Next up here, and players getting talked up, fairly heavily in camp so far is Demario Douglas, and I think that's them feeling good about him is another reason why I think they were able to get rid of Kayshon Boutte over to Houston. If you're going to play Pop Douglas up top, I think you're probably aiming a little shallow. Again, he had this 23 ball last year. Could he have a game like that? Sure. What are the odds? So if you're playing 150 sets, I don't hate it, but probably not going to get to a lot of them. And if I were going to get to him, my builds would look a lot like the Kyle Williams builds. Mac Hollins is someone I probably would not consider in the captain spot. He's more of a flex option, and honestly, he's a little bit priced up for my liking. He did have a decent role last year. Again, saw 8 targets in the Super Bowl, caught 4 of them. I mean, decent game at 17.8. I would probably, steer away from putting him in the captain spot, but if you want to work him in a 150 build, I would treat him just like Douglas, just like Kyle Williams. I just think the upside for Douglas and Williams is a little bit higher. Matt Collins can be used down the field in much of the same way that Kyle Williams can be used, but Kyle Williams has definitely shown that it only takes one or two catches for him to really have a massive impact. So most likely I would use Matt Collins in the flex at 3,600. Next up here, Romeo Dobbs coming over from Green Bay, I think is somewhat captain eligible. I would probably look to get to him in my 150s. I don't know if he would make my 20 max stuff. A little bit of upside there again with 29.4 versus Chicago. I don't know if he can go, 8 for 11 on 124 and a tutty in this spot, but I definitely wouldn't say it's out of the cards either. I'll probably have, 3%, something like that, in the captain spot in 150s. Again, if you have Dobbs up top, we're still talking 3 3s and 4 2s in this game. So you're probably talking something like that, run it back on the other side with JSN and two guys from Seattle. And then next up, AJ Brown, I think is pretty self-explanatory. Again, I think that it could be a situation where AJ Brown has a little bit slower of a week in week one. Coming over, new offense, new playbook, could take him a minute to really get up to speed here. So I'm not like looking to dive in fully on AJ Brown. I think what my stuff showed, and again, you'll be seeing the Sims for the first time that I just saw him. I just ran them before I hopped on after the Kayshawn Booty news. Um, but I think what we're likely to see is AJ Brown in your smaller field stuff. That's probably not going to be that popular in the captain spot. But as you start to move up the ladder, you're going to start to see more of those tail outcomes where AJ Brown has a large game. So I would imagine that 20 max would have to be in the cards before I start considering AJ Brown at the captain spot, at least in this game in week one. If you have AJ Brown up top again, much of the same song and dance as before. I think you can consider something like that, and then three on the other side, something like that, three on the other side. Multiple different ways to play around with this game. Um, so yeah, that's going to do it for the QB, the running back, and the wide receivers for New England. Next up, we'll look at the tight end spot. We got Hunter Henry at 7,200, who I think is captain viable, and we got Eli Raridon. I think Raridon's going to take. We talked about it in the last video. If you haven't checked it out, I think Eli Raridon's going to take much of the Austin Hooper role for New England. However, I think it's going to take him some time to kind of ramp up to where Austin Hooper was last season. So I expect that Eli Raridon is probably more of a flex option. Would not consider him in the captain spot, but I think at 1,800, if he catches one and happens to fall into the end zone accidentally, or maybe he's, they're running 12, 13 personnel, Henry's covered, and they just happen to dump him a ball out into the flat. If he gets into the end zone at 1,800, I think we're on to something. If he doesn't score a touchdown, I think we're in trouble. But it doesn't take much to pay off that $1,800 tag. I would imagine he's probably, I haven't looked at my projections again. I just reran them, but I imagine he's somewhere in the 2 or 3, fantasy point mean projection. So don't mind getting him in the flex at that cheap price. Hunter Henry here at 7,200. Tight ends typically go off on Thursdays. And with this game being on a Wednesday, who knows? But 27.5 could get you a win in the captain spot. But I think it's probably something where if I'm playing a 20 max, I'm considering Henry. If I'm playing 150s, I'm probably looking at 2-3% Henry in the captain spot. Otherwise, he's more of a flex option. I do like him quite a bit in the flex, especially given the news with Booty. They're not running the same style of routes. So, Henry's not going to be the direct beneficiary of Kayshawn Booty leading. But I think as we spread out this, passing volume a little bit more throughout these other guys in the offense, I think he's going to, catch a little bit of that work there. Kicker spot and defense spot, I would not consider either of these plays. Let me go ahead and get that out of there before somebody gets confused watching the video. I wouldn't consider either of these plays as captain options. These are more just fillers in your flex. I think this game sets up pretty nicely for the defense and the kickers in that I don't see it being super high scoring, 45 to 47 style range. And right now the line is 44.5. So I don't mind getting to Borgalis and to the Patriots defense in the flex spot here. 1 point there in the Super Bowl, but you see some upside here with 13, 20, 15, 12. I mean, they got some upside games in them. but not really tournament winning captain scores, which is what is making me lean away from New England's defense. So I'll probably be around 20 to 25% on both these players in the flex spot if I'm building 150s. Do you also do showdowns for the main slate or just island games? So we're going to do an hour and a half live stream for the main slate before we go into the main slate each week. And then island games, depending on the game. So I'm going to cover the first game on Wednesday. I'm going to cover every Thursday night football, every Sunday night football, and every Monday night football game. I likely will not cover like the overseas games, just because during that time I'm trying to get my main slate rosters up and going. We're gonna already be live doing the main slate content, so I probably won't get a lot of stuff out for like the Australia games or anything of that nature. So I'll probably just watch those as we are live streaming our main slate stuff. So hopefully that answered your question there, Mike. Um, Next up, we'll float over to Seattle. With the Seattle side, not a lot has changed, but we have seen a couple of injuries here for the Seattle offense. We'll start here with Sam Darnold. Let's get him in the captain spot. 14-1. I think he's a fine captain if you are going to pair him or captain him. I would pair him with at least two pass catchers in this offense. So we're probably talking about like Darnold, JSN, Jadarian Price, Shaheed, Myers, Cup, AJ Barner, even Seattle's defense. I think you can consider George Halani, to a lesser extent, Emmanuel Wilson, Torrey Horton, if he is eligible and healthy. Um, Elijah Arroyo is going to see some snaps now that Jake Bobo is on IR. And then Kobe White might get some snaps. And then Saubert will see the field, but likely won't have any kind of output. So you want at least two of those guys. So it probably looks something like this, and then run it back on the other side with three guys from New England or something like that, and then two guys from New England on the other side. So there's a lot of different ways that we can break this game down, a lot of different builds for this one, honestly, given that these two teams are a bit spread out, which can make Showdown a little bit difficult, and it's probably going to make things really condense and converge on JSN as a popular play here, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Next up, you have Jadarian Price, you have George Halani, and Emmanuel Wilson. Wilson with this Q tag. Let's see what this is about. I haven't seen this injury yet, so this might be something that happened last week. Set out preseason opener. I mean, that's not a lot of news, honestly. Could have just been rest. Could have been that they don't want to lose another back, given that Charbonnet is not all the way back yet. He played for Green Bay last year and played half decent toward the end of the season. I expect we'd probably see something along these lines. I don't think he's going to get 14 carries. We probably see somewhere in that 6 to 8 carry range for Emmanuel Wilson. He would not be captain eligible for me, but I don't mind mixing him in the flex. However, the thing that makes it tough on getting to Emmanuel Wilson is for $200 more, you got the guy who's currently listed as the starter for Seattle. If you didn't watch the preseason tape on George Halani last season, but he was going pretty wild in the preseason, balling out there. So I don't mind getting him into, if I'm running a 150 set, I don't mind getting him into the captain spot if I can find a roster that I like that's not going to be highly duped. But predominantly, he's going to be a pretty friendly flex option for me at 4,200 for Halani in week one. A player that I am interested in getting a little bit in the captain spot would be Jadarian Price. I do think that we're going to see an annoying three-headed monster here to start the season, but if either of these players were to have a massive score, I would imagine that would be Price. So don't mind getting to Price up top. If you are getting Price up top, I assume your rosters are going to look something like, this and three New England guys on the other side. You could go here and three New England guys on the other side. You could go simply here and four New England players. It just kind of depends on how you want to get those lineups in there. I will say, before we move too far into this video, if you are going to be building showdown lineups, make sure your lineup is telling a story. Don't just hop in here and pick, the six best players or the six most projected players or top projected players. So if you go on, you sign up for Breaking Boards Premium, again, Breaking Boards DFS, $19.99 now. So I really don't understand why you wouldn't be using some type of projections, but if you're going on there, don't just slam in the top projected guys and think you're going to win. Have a plan, tell a story with your lineup, and that's how you win in Showdown. Also, forget everything you know about, you know, main slate rosters and salary and trying to spend as close as you can to 50K. Like, forget everything for Showdown and just make your lineups tell a story. That's the most important thing that I could get across to you if you are going to be playing Showdown, especially in week one. Sort of, I know that contest wise and data wise, you're grinding for all slates. I meant, do you specifically play Showdown contests or Sunday day games as well? Um, I don't typically play for the Sunday day games just because I have so much volume on the main slate. Um, I'll usually run a little bit of information for the 1 o'clock slate, like typically it's like 6 games at 1 o'clock, and then, we add typically like 3 or 4 more at um, at 4 o'clock. So I will be grinding the 1 o'clock slate and the main slate, but I doubt I'll get to the Sunday day showdown slates. Do you anticipate FanDuel content? Yes. Um, Not sure if it'll be free. 19.99 is basically paying me about a dollar an hour now for week one stuff. I do have the FanDuel stuff ready. I'm just going to go in and make some final tweaks to it given today's news. But it'll be up on the site, I would imagine, by Friday of this week for sure. Again, we're going to go live Sunday morning to talk about the main slate for DK and for FanDuel. Did max out the $5 contest on FanDuel. I don't know if you guys have seen that yet. $5 150 max, essentially a free shot at a million, because any lineups that you have that don't reach the cash line, they're going to give you those, entry fees back in FanDuel credits. So if you're going to play over there, probably the easiest contest to get into for week one, because if you have 750 that you're looking to spend, you can get in over there, max that out, and then you're not going to lose any money, and hopefully you get lucky and you're sitting on a million and you pay your taxes, and then you're good to go for the rest of the year, right? How much money are you going to have in play in week one? Probably 3K, probably something like that. I'll probably do 150 in the FanDuel, which is already in there. Um, might run 150 on DK in there, $5, just because it's a $5 shot at a million. And then I'll probably run like $1,500 in some smaller field style stuff, since I'm going crazy on those massive contests in week one. But hopping back over to the slate here, JSN, obvious captain, Rashid Shaheed. You got Cooper Kupp, and we'll include Torrey Horton at this time. Jake Bobo's out. We're probably going to see some type of a projection on Velus Jones or Kobe White. I would imagine it's probably White. But we're going to have to nail that down as we get closer to the slate. And those guys are only going to be flex options anyways for Velus Jones or Kobe White, just depending on who's there. If Torrey Horton ends up being out for some reason, then that's going to open things up for both those guys. But unless JSN, Shaheed, and everybody goes down, it's going to be hard for Velus Jones and Kobe White to be in the captain conversation. But again, we'll keep an eye on it. Going to be doing this show again next week as we head into week number one here coming up on us. Torrey Horton, went down over the weekend here. Didn't practice Monday. Looks like he's working on some things, so we'll see what that means as we get closer to the season. He's predominantly going to be a flex option anyways. I think Shaheed is going to see a little bit of a bump in this offense this season, so Torrey Horton's more of a flex play for me. Cooper Kupp, the upside here is essentially gone with Cooper Kupp. I think 12.1 might be about his ceiling, and he got 12 targets. So I don't know that there's a scenario where I see Kupp being the captain that you need in week one. Again, would be a flex player. There's a lot of guys in that range. You're going to have Hunter Henry cheaper, AJ Barner cheaper, Seattle's defense cheaper. The kickers are right there. There's a lot of guys that's going to make it difficult for me to get overweight on Cooper Kupp. I don't love seeing this price tag at $6,400 on Rashid Shaheed, but I do think he's captain eligible. He could have a huge game here with Sam Darnold, with all the injuries with Jake Bobo and maybe Torrey Horton. If Torrey Horton ends up being out, that's going to really help a guy like Shaheed. I would imagine once we look at his projections again, you're going to see them for the first time as I'm seeing them. I'd imagine that we'd probably end up around 10 fantasy points for Shaheed, and I do expect a roll increase. If you have Shaheed in the captain, I think you're probably talking like a Shaheed, Darnold, Price build with three guys on the other side, or JSN alongside him with Darnold, maybe in the flex, something like that. So probably 3-3-4-2 if you have Shaheed up top. Most obvious captain on the slate. We're not going to go over all the builds that you can get with him, but JSN, with this offense getting more and more condensed, without Charbonnet, without Kenneth Walker, without Bobo, maybe without Horton. Once it gets more condensed and you have a guy who had a massive target share anyways, I mean, look at his game logs from last season. Yes, New England held him under wraps in the Super Bowl, but 34.3, 23.6, 21.3, 28 point. I mean, I'm going to have, an equal share as the rest of the field with JSN in the captain spot. You can build 2 4s with JSN up top. You can build 3 3s. You can build 4 2s. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can go with JSN up top. If I were going to build a ton of JSN lineups, I honestly don't mind going some 5 1s, just for the sake that I think that's going to be one of the only ways that you're going to be able to get truly different in this particular instance. Tight end spot here, AJ Barner, I think, is captain viable. And then we're going to look at Elijah Arroyo, who had a pretty good game in preseason this week. At 1,600, don't mind getting him in there at all. He'll be one of my, popular plays for these punt plays down here at 1,600. Again, it just kind of depends on what happens with Torrey Horton, Velus Jones, and Kobe White the closer we get to the season. The only thing about Arroyo is Saubert's going to see some snaps there blocking at the tight end spot as well. But at 1,600, I think you can play quite a bit of Arroyo in the flex. We're probably talking like, 6 to 8% in the flex and 150 build, something along those lines. And then next up, we have Barner, 15.4 there against them in the Super Bowl, 4 for 54 and a tud. Don't mind getting him in the captain spot. His ceiling's a little bit low. But again, the more these guys start to go down, the more this offense starts to get condensed. It really just depends on what it opens up for us, right? So if we go Barner, JSN, and let's say to get different, we won't go with Darnold in this particular build. As we scroll up here, let's say that we unlock this thing and we go, May, Stevenson, what can we get there? I mean, don't hate it, right? So just make sure it tells a story. And if that story makes sense to you, I'd say the lineup's viable. Next up here, Jason Myers and the Seahawks defense. I could see either in the captain spot in large field stuff. In the most recent sims I ran before this one that we're about to look at, Jason Myers didn't make it into the captain spot, but he was in my flex quite a bit. Seattle defense, if you're playing large field stuff, I think you can mix them into the captain spot. If you're playing smaller field stuff, I probably wouldn't get to them in the captain, but I don't mind mixing them in the flex. These are like 30 to 35% type players that I want, especially at the prices that they are for week number 1. That's going to do it for breaking the slate down. Let's talk about looking at some of the sim information that we have going. So let me switch the screen over here and then we'll talk about what popped up in the sim guide. Again, this is the first time that I am seeing it as well. So we're looking at it here together. As you see, and just one second here, guys, let me get one drink real quick. As you see, we ran 10,000 sims of what we call P50 sims. So P50 is essentially our mean projection. That is the actual projection that I have on the player. If I'm playing cash, I'm looking at the P50 builds. P75 is a 75th percentile outcome. If I'm playing small field GPPs, 3-mans, 5-mans, even up to 20-mans, I'm probably looking at the P75 build. P90, that's going to be your larger field stuff. The million over on DK for week 1, the million over on, FanDuel for week 1, that kind of stuff. So large field P90, 3 max, 5 max, P75, and, cash builds if you're still playing cash, or small field stuff, big money stuff. I think you can use the P50 mean builds there. As we float over here, P50 captain ownership share was 37.3% JSN, and it actually goes up to 38% in your P75, and it goes down slightly to 34% in your P90, the large field stuff. I think agreeing with the sim guide here, I think JSN remains the clear captain. I'll probably be around about those numbers, especially if I'm building 150 sets. As you can see here, Kyle Williams is going to move up the depth chart just a little bit with Kayshon Boutte being over in Houston now. And then we've already talked about this to nauseum. 3-3s and 4-2 builds are typically going to be the way to go for this slate. And then the Seahawks defense becomes useful the larger the contest. And then we saw the biggest boost here today with JSN, moving him up about 1.5 with the news over the weekend that Jake Bobo is going to be out already on IR, and then maybe Torrey Horton. If Torrey Horton does go out, these numbers are going to go up. Rashid Shaheed, we talked about it, down to 10.5 in the projection, which is actually up from last week. We got the news on Torrey Horton, and the Sims automatically ran. So without Torrey Horton, we're looking at 11.5 on Rashid Shaheed. We got a little boost on Elijah Arroyo, given the preseason output that he had last night, or the night before last. And then we got a little dip here on the Seattle defense, given that the New England team is going to be a little bit more concentrated. We ran 10,000 sims of each one of these lenses, the P50, the P75, the P90. We also run, when we run the sims, we run our original set of sims, so we get 10,000 lineups, and then we run generated, another 10,000 of each one of those with those lineups playing against the projected lineups in that contest. So we not only run our lineup sims, we run the contest sims as well. So each one of these lineups have passed essentially 2 sets of runs, given that they ran through our lineup sims, and they also ran through the contest sims. This showdown guide is up. Again, it will be free for this particular show, and then probably free for the next show. And then once we go live, the first week, that's when you're going to want to go over and sign up for Breaking Boards Premium there for $19.99 for the month. You're going to get a ton of stuff. I mean, you're probably talking about like 20 sheets and articles each week. You're going to get access to, we're going to do a free live stream for each showdown slate, but you're going to get access to the premium live stream that I'm going to do about 30-45 minutes on before each showdown slate. So a lot of cool stuff for $19.99 if you want to check it out when the time comes. Kyle Williams salary relief, which comes as a surprise with nobody, given that Boutte moved over and Kyle Williams has been balling out in preseason. 3-3 builds led the way. And then we got Kyle Williams boosted up from 0 fantasy points prior to the move to 4 fantasy points with the move with Kayshon Boutte. Top 5 captains in your P50 stuff, so your cash game style, very, very small field stuff. JSN, Drake May, Sam Darnold, AJ Brown, Rashid Shaheed, not too surprising. I don't think you want to go anywhere past Drake May and JSN if you're playing small field stuff. A couple of different game theory options. If you're going to play JSN up top, you can pair him alongside Darnold, or you can actually fade Darnold if you want to get different. If you're playing a 100-man contest or a 200-man contest, maybe you play JSN captain and you play May on the other side and you fade Darnold. Again, you can get a little different there with May in the captain spot. And if you want to get a little different extra, you can pair May alongside 2 pass catchers, even with his rushing upside. 3-3 builds led the way for the smaller field stuff. Moving up to the P75, again, JSN, we see AJ Brown jump Drake May, which is a little bit surprising. And then we see Rashid Shaheed and Sam Darnold. Again, JSN up top. AJ Brown, if you want to play him in 3-5 max type stuff, is a way to get different. And then Drake May, obviously, there as well. Much of the same style of builds. I would probably not go with this option here. Personally, I would use this in like a 20 max or a 150 max, but I'd be fine with all the other 4 options. And again, you see it, 3-3 and 4-2 lead the way. And then about 10% of the time, we see some 5-1s. I think I would probably reserve those for the large field stuff. And then next up here, again, JSN up top, AJ Brown, Rashid Shaheed jumps Drake May, and then we see Trevion Henderson sneaking there as well. Just a few different ways to get these ceiling guys in there. And again, you see 3-3 and 4-2s are leading the way, and the 5-1s are still around 10% there. you see the construction as it starts to build. You know, 3-3s are pretty important in P50s, but even get more important the more you move up in your builds there or in the size of your contest. 4-2s are looking good. And then obviously you see here the 5-1s are going to be on the lower side of what we're going to be building for. So predominantly we're going to have, you know, if I was building a 150 set, we're probably talking, you know, 30% 3-3, 25% each one of the 4-2s, and then whatever's left split between the 5-1s. This is going to be the top lineups per build. So you have JSN, Drake May, Hunter Henry, Sam Darnold, Jason Myers, and Seahawks defense. I would probably not run that, but it is the top projected lineup there. I typically don't run, you know, 2 kickers, 2 defenses type of situations. I like to get either 1 kicker or 1 defense in a lineup. Don't hate it, but I probably would look to get a little different there. JSN, Drake May, Hunter Henry, Sam Darnold, Jason Myers, Seahawks. Again, what we just talked about with the Seahawks defense and Jason Myers. And then for your large field stuff, JSN, Drake May, AJ Brown, Patriots defense, Rashid Shaheed, and Seahawks defense. I definitely wouldn't run double defense unless you're just trying to get super different. I think the one thing to really take into consideration on this slide, because these lineups are going to all change before week 1, is if you notice the salary, right? Even in the large field stuff, we're spending a lot of salary in this particular matchup, given that JSN is going to pull a ton of ownership and given his price. So I probably wouldn't go, you know, 44K or 45K on this particular slate. I'd probably try to get in that 48 to 49 to 50K range, given how the sims are playing out. That'd probably be the number one thing that I would take from that slide. Again, JSN belongs in the primary captain pool. May a flex anchor, may, you know, that's not going to be a surprise to anybody. We're going to see a little bit of bump to Kyle Williams, AJ Brown, and Trevion if healthy. You know, we got the news on him today, but no real concrete news on how injured he is. So a lot of stuff to change still for this slate. Again, we're going to run the show back next week. So we'll kind of play it by ear there and see what we have going on the closer we get to week number 1. Going to pop this off the stage here. Give me 2 seconds, and then we will go live with our next window here, which is going to be more than likely the showdown breakdown sheet. So we'll look at this first. Got that pulled up here for you guys. As we start to look at it, what this is it's a breakdown of, like, you know, core plays for me, my top plays, guys that I'm looking to get into a bit of my lineups. Again, it could change on Trevion if we see more news on him that he's out. But I mean, it's pretty obvious, self-explanatory core plays here. You know, Drake May, Sam Darnold, obviously core plays. Trevion, if healthy. Ramondre Stevenson, obvious. JSN, obvious. AJ Brown, Hunter Henry. Essentially players that you don't need me to tell you to play, right? Romeo Dobbs to a little bit lesser extent there. And then these are guys that I think you can get GPP leverage on. Sam Darnold, captain, right? Not a lot of people are going to look to get Darnold in the captain, given that we have JSN. Jadarian Price, uncertainty in his role in week 1 might scare some people off, so maybe we can use him up top. Rashid Shaheed, another situation where maybe we can use him in larger field stuff to break away from the field. Seahawks captain, good leverage in large field GPPs. And then kicker captain is going to be a little bit less for me, but I don't hate getting Jason Myers in there. And then Cooper Kupp in the flex, you know, given that Bobo's down, that Torrey Horton could be out, could be a situation where you want to get to a little bit more Cooper Kupp in the flex. And then solid value, solid guys and viable guys. George Halani listed as a starter, uncertainty in this Seattle backfield. So it could be a situation where we're going to see Halani have a little bit of a decent game here. As you see the projection, 7.3 for P50, 11.2 for P75, and 17.2 for P90. Demario Douglas, Kyle Williams, AJ Barner, Patriots defense, and then Borregales, all guys that I think are viable and solid no matter what kind of build you're putting together. A little bit of deep dart throw type guys. Emmanuel Wilson, we talked about. Reggie Gilliam's going to see some run at $200. If you have a lineup that you're like, man, I got $200 left and I think I can put this together. if you want to throw him in there and hope he accidentally falls into the end zone for some reason, I think you're just probably reaching a little bit too deep on this slate. Torrey Horton, a guy that we talked about, if he's not injured, could have a decent projection. Elijah Arroyo, Eli Raridon, and Jack Westover is probably going to see some snaps, much like Reggie Gilliam. Both those guys kind of mix and match there at fullback. And then the guys that we're fading and we really don't want any of is Eric Saubert there at $600. That is the Showdown breakdown. Kind of a if you're a Showdown premium subscriber, if you're a premium subscriber, you're going to play Showdown. You don't have a lot of time. You just kind of need some quick information. This is like a quick hitter. Maybe you get off work late, whatever the case is. Hey, I don't have time to look through your projections and all that stuff. Don't have time for the Sims. How can I put in lineups without making an ass of myself? Then you could pop on, look at the Showdown breakdown real quick and have an idea of where you want to go in this matchup. So that's kind of the Showdown breakdown. Again, at the $19.99, you're going to get this for every Showdown slate. Again, you'll get the Sims guide for every Showdown slate. You're actually going to get the Sims guide for the main slate as well. I've been working on that. So working nonstop on getting you guys some extra stuff as well. And then as we move forward here, we'll look at the actual projection sheet. This is my first time seeing the projection sheet as well, much like you guys. Again, I just reran this right before I hopped on, given the Kayshon Boutte news. But as you see here, team, opponent, game, player, position, all self-explanatory. Snap low, snap high. This is the amount of snaps that the lower level of our Sims ran out. This is about the max that we could see out of A.J. Brown. Team plays, given our game environment article that you'll see for the main slate, you'll see how we got to these team play numbers. 61.5 projected plays here for New England. Expect A.J. Brown to be in for about 59 of those. Expect him to run 33.15 routes. We got some targets here at 8.97, receptions at 5.46. You're going to get this for each player on New England, each player on Seattle, which we'll look at a couple of guys here in just a moment. Receiving yard projection of 67.3, total yards at 67.3 as he's not looking to get involved on the ground. He has a 38% chance of getting into the end zone. Our actual projection on A.J. Brown is 14.54. P75 projection is 22.4. And then P90 is 32.52. Again, if you're building, smaller field cash stuff, you're going to be using the P50. If you're building 3 max, 5 max stuff, you're going to be using the P75. If you're building, larger field contests, you're going to want to use the P90. As you see here, the flex salary and then points per dollar. So you're getting 1.82 fantasy points per $1,000 on that projection, and then 2.4 on that projection. Pretty self-explanatory there. And then as you move over to the captain spot, you're going to see the same type of breakdown. Here's what we expect at 1.5, his actual mean projection, and the P75 and then P90. And then you get the points per dollar there as well. You get my roll notes on this particular game. And then you'll also get this. You're going to get the sim-based ownership projections for each one of these. I haven't run the most updated Sims yet. Again, with the Kayshon Boutte news, didn't have enough time to get it out before the show started, but you'll get all those projections for ownerships for the slate. So that's essentially it for Showdown stuff. Well, let me see if I can pull up real quick for you guys. I'll pull up the main slate stuff and give you guys an idea of what we're gonna have going for the main slate. So give me 2 seconds. Let me pull up the screen here for you guys, and we'll give you an idea of what at least I'm in charge of for the main slate. We're going to have 6 or 7 different articles that I'm actually not going to be in charge of, but we'll run through this real quick. For the main slate, I'll just kind of give you guys an idea of what we're working with here. So this is my War Games article. This is going to come out late on Saturday nights. This predominantly is going to be my breakdown of like exactly how I'm attacking week 1. This is actually my live DraftKings version of this right now. Obviously, it's going to change a ton. So you're going to get my mission brief, which is exactly how I'm playing the slate. Top 3 games that I'm looking to take advantage of, where I'm getting my highest exposure: Gibbs, Bijan, Chase, and A-Chain. Largest fade, I'm full fading Cleveland and Jacksonville stacks. Preferred build is going to be my quarterback plus 1 or 2 plus a bring back. New Orleans and Detroit has the best game environment. and Cleveland and Jacksonville is the least game environment. Um, P50 entry would be a New Orleans, Detroit, plus Tampa Bay and Cincinnati. P75, New Orleans, Detroit, and then Atlanta, Pittsburgh. And then P90 stuff, I don't mind getting to like Malik Willis style builds, and then bring back a secondary stack with Olave and Gibbs, something along those lines. And then you're going to get a breakdown of each individual game. So the amount of plays, the P50 projection, P90 projection, um, you know, how well it's simming out in our model, game outlook, how I'm playing it, best stacks, leverage, favorite pieces. You're going to get that for each game as we scroll down, So all 12 games on the main slate. Don't want to make you guys sick there, but you guys get the point. You're going to get that for each one of our main slate games. And then you'll also get, let me get this other article pulled up here. This is the defense versus position chart. Let me get it on the screen for you guys. Again, all this stuff, every slate, $19.99 for the month. Like, yeah, I don't know how to make it any cheaper. So this is essentially the breakdown of this dashboard here. Gives you the actual defense versus position if you just want to look at it all at once. All positions is kind of a longer view of that. You get it for the QB. So DK points per game, that's what it looked like given the 2025 numbers. Obviously, that's going to change the more we move into 2026, but get it for every position. So you get total DK points allowed, DK points per game allowed, league versus league average. So Cincinnati at the running back spot gave up 6.77 fantasy points per game, or DK points per game more per game than any other team, or the neutral team last season. So you're going to get that defense versus position chart there. You'll also get access to the game environment chart, which I will put on the screen now. Sorry, it's taking me a few minutes to work in between these articles here, but just wanted to show you guys what we got going. A little bit of a dashboard here. Again, the game environment, projected plays, consensus lines, projected dropbacks for each team, our breaking board score that we assigned to each game, how we're playing it, how it's simming out in our sims. You're going to get the game board here. Again, gives you a good breakdown of who's favored by how much, what each team implied total is, projected plays for the game, dropbacks for each team, that kind of stuff there. This is your team level stuff. So a lot of the same same information, just broken down in different ways. And then here you have it broken down by game, a little bit of a takeaway there per game. And then lastly, we'll take a look at the actual projection chart. Sorry, I'm going through this a little bit quick here. We're going to go through, again, we're going to spend about an hour and a half on Sunday morning breaking down the main slate. So I don't want to spend too much time on it today without the guys being here with me, but give you guys an idea of what the main slate projection file looks like here. As we start to break into this one, so you're going to get this for each main slate. So you're going to get the team, opponent, game, player, position, team plays, projected snaps, amount of routes, carries, targets, receptions, passing yards, rushing yards, receiving yards, total touchdowns, the P50 projection, the P75, P90, our GPP composite score, obviously DK salary, points per dollar, a little bit highlighted stuff there. So Bucky Irvin looks pretty good in week one. How these guys simmed out in our sims. So it looks like Bucky Irving is better for smaller field stuff, but also in play and large field stuff. Right now we got the questionable injury stuff there as well on the status, and then you'll get the roll notes there. So, on Baker, full-time quarterback working projection gives the modest efficiency, health, rebound without forcing major passing volume increase for Baker Mayfield in week one. So you're going to get that for all 24 teams for week number one. Looks like Cincinnati's simming pretty well, projecting well. Burrow, Chase Brown, Jamar Chase. Let's see. I thought I saw a comment asking about does Bryce Young need to be double stacked, or can you run him with one receiver? I would typically lean to his style of quarterback, I would typically lean to try to get to 2. But given that he's been a little bit inept at, passing volume, I think you could go 1. I think you could go 1 and just hope that a lot of the larger field or a lot of the more expensive price quarterbacks, I think you just hope that they have a mediocre week and somehow Bryce gets honed in on, let's say, Jalen Coker or Ted McMillan or somebody like that and throws, that person 1 touch or 2 touchdowns. So let's say that Bryce gets you 20, Coker gets you 18, that kind of stuff. I think Bryce is a little bit of an anomaly where you can get him. I think I actually prefer the Bryce 1 versus the Bryce 2, but let's look at the actual projections. Let's scroll down here to Carolina. Got to add Kayshon Boutte still, so keep that in mind there. Where's Carolina? Tennessee, Atlanta, Pittsburgh. There we are. So Bryce Young simmed at 16.18. Pretty decent projection there for Coker and a pretty decent projection there for Tet. So again, if you have one of these games where you get 21 out of Bryce and 21 out of Tet, I don't hate getting to 1, but I don't think even at P75, even at P90, if you wanted to go 2, I think you go Bryce Brooks Tet or Bryce Brooks Coker. So that would be how I would look to play it. And then if you wanted to run it back on the other side with like Loveland, if for some reason you get Bryce throwing 2 touchdowns and maybe he runs 1 in, 2 touchdowns to Tet, runs 1 in, and Jonathan Brooks catches some out of the backfield and gets a touchdown as well. So you get 27 from Bryce, 22 from Brooks, 29 from Tet. You bring it back on the other side with Loveland, and maybe they're in a catch-up script there. Many different ways I think you can play week 1, honestly. I think Bryce Young is more of a DK play, which we'll talk about more on the main slate breakdown this weekend, but I don't think that you want to get to that style of player on FanDuel. I think on FanDuel you pretty much want to pay up for your quarterback, given that the salaries are a little bit more condensed on FanDuel, and you typically can play guys over there that provide you that rushing floor. So like a Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, that kind of stuff. More likely to get to those guys on FanDuel versus on DK. But hopefully you all got something out of today's episode. Again, Breaking Boards Premium, breakingboardsdfs.com, $19.99 for the month. Gonna get a ton of stuff. Try it out. I mean, $20. If you try it out, you hate it, you can cancel it anytime. We're not gonna hold you to it, but I think you'll get a lot of value for $20. A lot of Showdown stuff every Monday night, Thursday night, Sunday night. You're gonna get a ton of stuff for that. Every main slate, you're gonna get a ton of stuff for that as well. FanDuel stuff is coming. Again, I'll have it out to you by Friday. I just need to proofread and all that kind of stuff to make sure that I'm good to go there. But I've already ran everything that we need to run. So it should be out here soon. But again, appreciate everybody hanging out with me. Again, if you're still drafting best ball teams, check out the Solver Draft Assistant tool. Use code BB26. You'll get 20% off there if you're still drafting best ball teams. But we'll see you guys next Monday around 5:30. And we'll do another breakdown of this game, given the news and the changes and everything. And then we'll see you guys at 9:30 on Sunday morning if you want to hang out for the main slate breakdown. Appreciate you as well as always, Mike, hanging out with me. Hopefully you guys have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you guys on Sunday morning. Thanks.